Just telling these guys I had to drive a lot today. 117, 109, 107. I can't believe all the drift overs. These guys, they just don't. It's the same thing. They just down county's fine. They got to have trucks up here, and I didn't see a truck all day long.
85 when you get down. I went to Frederick the other day, and that's that stretch there where it's really flat with the fields.
Yeah.
They had 2 trucks going back and forth just on that.
Yeah. Look at Art right up here.
Yeah.
You and I.
Okay. Thanks for coming, everybody, or for being on Zoom. We have a quorum now, so we can go ahead and get started. The first order of business is to adopt the minutes from the last meeting, which I circulated previously. Anyone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
Adam, all those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Just quickly, in fact, Derek and I were talking about this a little bit. First off, I wanted to talk just quickly about the status of the Ag Reserve Economic Study. The D15 delegation, as you know, is considering introducing a bill that would do a study pretty much along the lines of the kind of things we talked about at our economic forum back in October of 2023. And I did a quick testimony. Bill Tompkins from the Montgomery County Economic Development Council also testified in support of it. There's really not, they don't really ask questions. You just have 2 minutes and then that's basically it. And they move on to the next bill. So as far as I know, I know they're still, and it's good, they're outreaching to a lot of other folks and that's great. So I don't know what it'll look like when it's finally introduced, but they're still thinking about how to frame it and what it'll look like in the end, but I think it will be introduced. And while we're talking about that, Sarah, it might be, if you wouldn't mind talking about the event you've been working on. It's kind of a tie-in a little bit to what we're talking about here, and I think it's a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, sure. So Amanda Cather, who works for the American Farm Trust, AFT, and I are friends, but also have been talking a lot about how frustrating it's been that as the Ag Reserve, we are mentioned so little in like 2050 Thrive and other county plans. It's just sort of a general and then the Ag Reserve is out there and they're beautiful and we hope everybody knows that they're out there and they can go see it and enjoy it. So it seems like all of the, in the most recent plan, the 2050 Thrive plan, the language was centered around bringing awareness to and an appreciation for the Ag Reserve, which is all great, but it's not really a strategic plan for here are the ways in which we're hoping to, support ag workers or support farms or even integrate farming into our overall goals of food sustainability or workforce development, things like that. So she, through her work with the American Farm Trust, they are bringing this incredible speaker to Virginia in Richmond. So it's a couple hours away, but they're going to drive up here and come and speak to a group of invited ag representatives, ag workers, not next Thursday, but the Thursday after that. So January 23rd. And the idea is that the Fair Access Committee in town of Poolesville would be like a co-host of this in bringing together interested parties to talk about envisioning what the Ag Reserve could be more strategically, other than just land preservation, which is great, but what else can we do other than just land preservation?
Sounds like a great opportunity. I'm glad you were working on it. Is there anything we need to do besides just be a co-sponsor? And where is it going to be held?
So it's going to be our locals. We spoke
okay.
to Sandy and Dave. They'll kind of reserve the upstairs space for us. People can get food or not get food. I assume most people, will get something and join for the conversation. So it's not going to cost us anything.
Okay.
American Farmland Trust is going to cover the costs of transportation, bringing her up, and they're paying her an honorarium and all of that. So we are really benefiting from their investment. It's going to be a great opportunity. I was going to find the email. I'm going to forward the proposal to all of you right now so that you can see it.
How about the food at locals, Sarah? Do we have to contribute to that, or are they paying for that too?
No, the plan was just to let people buy their
Oh,
own
okay.
food.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
we
That's
could,
fine.
I mean, that's one idea is we could say, well, hey, how about we just pay locals a certain amount of money to provide, it's usually their pizza night, Thursday nights.
Yeah,
So we could sort of pre-order maybe
yeah.
X number of pizzas.
Well, we have room in the budget, so if you wanted to
Okay.
offer that,
Well,
you know.
why don't I kind of talk to me? She said it's okay. We're happy to cover the expenses, but I think she's not planning on paying for food. So I think
Okay.
if we want to, that's something extra that we could just offer.
Yeah,
So why don't I maybe talk to Dave and Cindy about the numbers that we are thinking of
right.
and get some type of estimate from them and then bring that back to you?
That's fine. If we're in the like $1,200, $1,500 range, I think that's fine.
Okay. All right. That's good to know kind of what number we're working with.
Yeah.
Sarah,
And the invitation list, again, I've just started compiling sort of a list of emails, and I'll share that with everyone as well. Just includes a lot of our ag leadership. So let me share that right now.
Sarah, while
And then
you're
once you take a
talking
look at
about-
that, you can let me know if there's other people that you think should be included in that invite list.
is this so invitation only, Sarah, or should we sort of spread the word for people who might decide they want to come? What's sort of that?
That's a great question. I mean, I think space is limited because we're at locals. It's not a huge space. But I also, if there are individuals who are interested in being a part of this and aren't on this list, I'm really open to that. But let me show you, let me share the list real quick, and then you can let me know if you think we should open it up. Let's see, I think I have everybody's emails right here. Okay, I've just sent it to your emails, the email list, and then now I'm gonna send you the memo as well.
And the time, what time does it start?
She was really asking us what we thought. I think we can say 5 o'clock, knowing
Okay.
that it'll be sort of a soft start at 5, and
Right.
then maybe having more of the presentation part start at 6.
Okay,
So people can get food, get settled, talk a little bit.
okay.
She just published a book in 2024 on ag resiliency. So let me find that. Apologies for not sharing this before. It's sort of been pulling it together these last couple days. I'm wanting to take advantage of having this woman in town.
Okay.
So can you guys all open the email list? Okay, good. Where is that? Here it is. Okay. Oh, I forgot to send it to Ed. I have to do one more person.
Are there any farmers that we would want to invite? I know there's Bob Sissel representing them, but is
I see Willard and I see a Jameson. I didn't know if you wanted to ask any more of the Jamesons or anybody else from the farmers.
I'm very open to that. I think it could be an open invitation to anybody who's actively farming in the ag reserve. I think that's a great idea. I mean, that's the whole goal, is to bring in the voices of those who are actually working the land. So yeah, if you want to start adding names at the bottom, then I can search for their email addresses. I know more of the tabletop farmers, like maybe I'll talk to Jenny Freeman and see kind of who's on her list of farmers that she works with. It's interesting. Do we have, Miles, does it exist a list, like a comprehensive list of like farms operating?
Not necessarily farms. Like we do know, like Lewis Orchard and stuff like that, like the commercial, like not commercial, but like, you know, the public facing farms where they have people come and get produce. We have some of that. In fact, those businesses are on our website so that people can reach out to them, although not all of them have great contact information, which is its own separate thing. Yeah. But we don't necessarily have a list of like individual farmers. Okay. But we know like Jamie, Jameson, and Billy, and all of them that like are like right around pretty well because they interact with us. But
and Caitlin and Amanda know quite a few as well because they're both farmers. Mm-hmm. Caitlin does flower farming and Amanda does sheep farming. Mm-hmm. So I can also bring that thought back to them and have them add some additional names.
Have you sent this to Bob Sissel to see who he thinks? Maybe he'd be a good one to reach out to.
Yeah, I'll call him.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
All right, that's good. Should be an interesting discussion. In that context, I mentioned this to Sarah, but Marilyn has a couple of times talked to me about her interest in trying to look at what the ag reserve policies ought to be going forward. She's told me that she's of the view that, we've had 40 years essentially of the ag reserve existing with pretty much what it started off with in terms of its policy framework, and some of the things like the mechanisms that fund it are actually in not very good shape.
They're no longer working.
Yeah, transfer of development rights, for example, apparently the county is actually paying for a lot of that now, and it's supposed to be done by private parties. So, there's some evidence that it probably needs to be relooked at anyway. So, anyway, this is probably maybe a good start at having a beginning dialogue on that issue. And I think Marilyn was on your list too anyway, so she would be, and I know Dawn Lutke was, I think as well, and those two would obviously be important, so.
Yeah, I have them on the list. I have Lily Chi on the list. Again, I don't know how many of like our representatives are going to be interested in this kind of a conversation, but it is related to the bill that she proposed, so maybe.
Yeah.
I think we wouldn't count on anyone since the sessions in like David Frazier, Hidalgo, and Lily, even though they would otherwise, I think, like to be part of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, right now is not a good time for them because the legislature's in session, so they probably can't go to much, frankly, out of Annapolis, but.
Doesn't hurt to invite them, though.
No, it doesn't hurt at all, and they certainly want to be, I'm sure want to be notified.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm very open to feedback if you guys have more thoughts, ideas about the best way to kind of serve this up.
From a public information standpoint, I know Derek asked if this is open to the public, but is there, and I don't think the answer is yes, but do you want to at least promote it on the website through fair access, either after the event, or, and then one other point would be maybe inviting all council members as a courtesy, if you really think this is an issue that will have legs, as a courtesy.
Sure,
Yes, that's
a great
absolutely-
point. Knowing that probably only the two would be the ones most likely to come, but as a courtesy, inviting them all, I think that's a great idea. And I am very open to having it on the website. I think it can be on the, I think it can be a public event. I just don't expect very many people, to come unless it's something that they're really passionate about.
Sarah,
So-
someone else that should be added is the chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board,
Okay.
or it's the National Capital Parks and Planning, and maybe as was being suggested, that not just the chair, but all of the planning board members, just as a courtesy.
Yeah, he was at our forum, so I'm sure he'd be interested. Of course, they just issued, as you know, a series of policies on everything, including they did a lot on the accommodations issue. They did a whole report on that, so they're obviously very focused on it.
Okay.
I mean, and if you get a lot of interest, would the committee have any interest in live streaming it on Facebook, or is it more like, is the tone to really just
I
start?
want people to feel really open to have frank conversations. I don't want to live stream it. I don't want people to feel like they're on the record. I
Gotcha.
want it to feel like we're in a cozy room in locals and people can just speak frankly about what the challenges are and some ideas that they might have, like kick around ideas. And in that sense, I think it would benefit us to keep it somewhat small and intimate.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I also understand, wanting to make people feel like they were invited to be a part of this conversation from the beginning, that we're not trying to keep anyone out. It's just that I know that once you get bigger than a certain size, it's harder to have kind of a group conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah, we should just record some photos, right?
After the fact, there's no reason at all not to do some good posts about it. I agree.
Yeah.
It's the start of a conversation, just some shaping from a messaging standpoint. If you
Yeah.
can help arm me with some of that, or if we could think it through offline, whatever, would be helpful for even just the post after the fact, or, or if anybody calls the town or calls, Link, even if the media get wind of it or something, like, is the
Right.
Fair Access Committee proposing we put Airbnbs up throughout, like, we should just, I
Yeah.
think, a little prepared for some of that.
That's a great point. Why don't you take a look at the email that I forwarded to you, and then you and I can maybe just talk later about what to provide, even like the staff at town hall, if anybody calls, or I think that's a great point. Yeah. Have a message. Hey, Ed.
How you doing? He's may not be.
muted right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the name of the speaker again, Sarah?
Sorry, what was that?
What's the name of the speaker that's going to sort of jumpstart the
Yeah,
conversation?
so her name is Julia Friedgood, and she's a senior fellow and senior program advisor at American Farmland Trust, and she just published a book called Planning Resilient and Sustainable Food Systems from Soil to Soil. What the American Farmland Trust does a lot of different consulting with farmers, but the ideas that Amanda and I have been kicking around are ways to integrate agriculture so that it is connecting with all the different parts of the county. So education, there's opportunities for students to get into farm work and get the right training and to get placed in internships so they get the experience, so that there are pathways for food to get processed enough to go to like the local schools and not just the farmers markets or the farm shares, but actually integrating locally grown food into our restaurants and our schools, and trying to work on local food sustainability, and having Poolesville, Montgomery County become kind of a model for that. As I think that's the direction that we are moving as a country. It's best for the environment. Anyways, so those are the types of conversations that we'd like to have, is how can we all come up with a unified strategic plan?
Just a couple thoughts. When you touched on education, I know the high school, has kicked around some ideas in the past. Maybe have some training. I don't know, Link, if you know that, or anybody else on the call, or maybe Ed. So I don't know if the high school representative may want to invite, or I know there have been talks in the past about a partnership with the universities at Shady Grove. So just opening up the aperture of potential invitees if you're interested at this stage of where this is at.
Global Ecology Studies Program might be a natural fit. They do quite a bit of work actually in the Ag Reserve in terms of environmental stuff, so that might be good. We can certainly ask them and see if a student in particular might be interested in coming. Bob has actually talked, when he came to our listening session, if you remember, he talked about having a speakers program so that they could actually have farmers go to the school, and actually not just this school, but other schools, and talk about agriculture and modern agriculture, what it's all about. So probably a good fit there.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll see what Mark thinks about it. All right, that's great. I appreciate it. I was going to do an update on the high school fields. Remember we talked about that, but Ed and Alan Hobbs are going to pull together a meeting. I know they haven't had time to do that, so it's not an emergency thing anyway. Nothing's going to happen on that probably not till the summer, but it would be good to have a meeting on that. I know Ed and Alan are focused on doing that at some point, so I just wanted to keep that on the radar screen. And that's basically trying to modernize our fields, obviously, especially the football field. Right on Reimagine, just a couple of quick things on that. I sent you guys around the draft proposal that came out. It's got an interactive map. And as you know, we proposed some ideas about how to improve public transportation in our area. And surprisingly enough, they've adopted not hook, line, and sinker, but certainly a lot of the ideas we talked about, including what they call fixed flex zone in the Western County. It's pretty much what we talked about. They haven't really yet decided how wide that would be, but they recognize that it can't just be something that goes at a half mile from Poolesville. So, that's a good start. They also recognize that there have to be changes in the routes, the bus route, especially Route 118, because right now it just basically goes to 118 and then it shoots down to Shady Grove Road. It doesn't go really to any places where the specialists and the doctors are, or along Shady Grove Road. So both of those in the draft plan, there's some modification ideas that are included. So it's promising. And Evan Glass, who's the head of the Transportation Committee, is planning to have a hearing on it sometime in the spring, and he'll probably invite us to testify, so that's good. And Dawn Ludke as well has been weighing in about some of the proposals that are in the new draft, and because she also proposed some things for her area to improve, because they've got a lot of the ag reserve over there too. So, it's nothing going to happen immediately. Unfortunately, there's no funding in the current scenario right now to do any of this, but 5 years from now, there's a possibility we could, and maybe before then, could get some money to get some of this done. Nancy, did you want to, I sent a response to you about maybe how we could actually, going forward, manage the advisory committees, but did you want to just kind of give us an update on where you are at this point on that?
Sure. So, I haven't really done much on it since we last talked, because I think I had kind of left it as, what do you guys want to do based on what we put together? But the proposal that you made sounds good. There are some, basically what it looks like is, I can keep checking once a week or so and see what new things come up. It's going to be hard to do the anticipatory kind of work that we had originally hoped we could do.
Yeah.
So I can follow the process that you laid out, just keeping an eye on it on a regular basis. It just means we're going to have to kind of act quickly if things come up. But in the meantime, there's also Beth from the office gave us a heads up on a few things that I had circulated that are available, are coming available soon for the five, from among the 5 committees that we had pointed to as our primary concern. So for health, they'll be looking soon for a licensed providers and consumers. And for people with disabilities, parents of people with disabilities, organizations that provide services, and people with disabilities. And then they had already put out calls but didn't get people for mental health practicing physician and children and youth, parent of child, organization that provides services to children, and private school. So those are all ones that we could think about now, if we want to. And then the last piece is that we had identified some people for who we already know are on these committees, for 5 of them. Linda Bergovsky, Amanda Cather, and so on. And so we might want to like assign people to just reach out to those folks and tell them what we're doing. I mean, I'm glad to do it, but I don't know all of them. And ask them just to keep an eye out for us. And then, you know, maybe we can make it a practice every 6 months or so to just check in with them and remind them that we're interested in doing this.
Yeah, I think on that last one, several of those people you mentioned, I know, like Linda, I've known for a long time, and I've got her email address I can forward it to, and there's certainly no reason you couldn't reach out to her and just tell her what we're doing, and I'm sure she'd be happy to do that. But if anybody else knows, I think you said you knew at least one of the people, Sarah.
Well, so Amanda Cather.
Yeah.
Yeah, very easily. I'll send you her email right now.
But in the interim, I thought initially when something comes up, when we know it's, and like you said, we're not going to know right away, but if we get an inkling that something might be happening in terms of a seat being open, then just let us, I think the first thing to do is just let the committee know that we may have an idea for somebody already. And
Right.
we wouldn't let it sit here. If we don't see anything or nobody has any idea in a couple days, then I have a list of 50 community groups, and I'll send that around to you guys, and you can add whoever you want to it. But we could then broaden it to those groups and say, would you have a name of a person who might be qualified to do this, and just explain what we're doing and why we would like their input. I think they'd be receptive to that, too. One of the things
my
that
only
we're...
suggestion there, my only suggestion there is that we be a little bit selective and not just go out to all 50 at once, because, I mean, there's a good possibility we won't get anything.
Right.
But, you know, we don't want to get too many where then somebody's done us a favor and given us some names and we're saying no to all the people because we have to choose from among them. So, you know, maybe we figure out what are the couple groups that would be most aligned with whatever the issue is, just to start. And if we're not getting feedback, then there's another layer of kind of reaching out to the broader list.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I don't want to send them to all 50, I agree. And we also want to avoid, if we can, having 2 or 3 candidates, because it's kind of self-defeating in a way, especially since they normally have people from down county anyway, so they're competing with them. If we can get a good candidate, that will help a lot, I think, and we can promote them a lot easier, I think, that way, too. If we had 3, then who do we choose to promote? So,
I mean, would we want to start with our own local care providers in terms of a licensed health provider?
I would think one of the 3, and
I mean, I know there's lots of healthcare providers who just live in Poolesville.
yeah, Meg
and work
Oberman's
in
another
other
one. She's
places.
yeah, Meg's another one. So there's several. Yeah,
I
actually.
might talk with Melissa Wiedenhofer about who she would suggest, because she's been gathering a group, has a subcommittee of health providers to be figuring out the health situation in the whole area. So,
Great. Do you want to do that, Derek? Do you want to talk to her?
which particular committee? So I can.
Well, I think there's the Health Commission.
Yeah, they're looking for licensed providers and consumers.
So 2 spots.
Yep.
So consumers, that just means people that are patients.
Anybody.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
anybody can be a consumer.
So there's two provider spots, it looks like, that are opening and then one consumer spot.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be good.
Oh, no, two consumer spots too. Expired. Okay. What is expired different than vacant, Nancy?
Yeah, and she wasn't, I mean, I'm not quite sure that this is ultimately going to be exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think vacant is, like, it wasn't expiring yet, but somebody was leaving early or for some reason. She
Okay.
said that happens a lot.
Oh, okay.
That's generally what that means. When a vacancy happens, it's because somebody did not re-up or they ended early.
Okay.
Expired means they got to the end of their term and now it's for the full term.
Okay.
Because the main difference between the two is usually that when you have a vacancy, that vacancy is to fulfill a vacancy to fulfill the rest of that term. So if it's like a 3-year term and they end after a year and a half, you have a year and a half before your term is up. Versus an expired one, they've served their whole term, so this new person would do the whole term. That's the nomenclature usually associated with those things.
So right now then, Nancy, the key focus is this health commission?
Well, sorry, I'm trying to read from the light of the, the glow of the screen. I printed it out.
And then you said mental health too.
Yeah, mental health. You did mention that.
So health is the provider and consumers. Mental health
Another
is a
licensed
practicing
provider.
physician also.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the disability, there are slots for disabilities and also slots for children and youth.
And when they say disabilities, do you know if they're looking at that broadly or is there specific?
That's my understanding. I can double check that, but that was my understanding. Because I think there are some more specialized committees and that one's
okay.
the,
So it's
Another
mental and physical disabilities. It's not any specific.
I
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
think so. I can double check.
Okay.
I'll make a note to double check. So that one, they need somebody with disability, parent of people with disabilities, and organizations that provide services.
So I guess here's my thought, in order to be as broadly reaching as possible, can we compile a list of things people that we're looking for and have Niles put that on the website, kind of like a public posting? And then maybe over the next week, each of us can try and identify some folks in each of those areas. I can think of some people right off the bat, but I think I'd want to first say like, hey, would you even be interested in this before I just throw their name out there?
Yeah.
And then we could maybe just share all of that over email with one another
Yeah.
and kind of weed it down from there.
Yep. And I think we just also have to be a little bit careful in not kind of making promises to anybody, both for the obvious reason that, who knows who else is
Right.
going to apply and who's going to be chosen, but even in terms of slots being open, like, it does sound like this is not quite as straightforward as, as one would imagine.
Yeah.
So especially with these, like, once we're looking at things that are being posted weekly, then we know that's really posted.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
are like anticipatory things that, I imagine there's some possibility of changing,
Yeah.
so.
So what she told you was, because of the knowledge she has of these commissions, she's thinking that these might happen in the near future.
Yeah, okay.
All right. All right.
So we can be thoughtful about which ones we kind of post publicly and the language that we use. And maybe it's more of we're looking for future candidates.
Yeah, you could do that. You could say-
Type of
Yeah.
posting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Future
because I wouldn't say that
prospects who
these are.
might be interested.
Okay.
I don't think we can post that these things are available because they're technically not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Nancy.
But I like the idea of saying, there's a possibility from what we know that there may be some seats available in the future, and we just wanted to start asking people, is there anybody you can think of, if these seats do become available, that might be a good candidate? That's a good way to approach it, I think.
And I think some initial language that just says representation is important. This is how underrepresented our part of the county is on these broader boards. Some context as to why it's important for people to step up.
Yeah, actually, Niles, on that point, Maryland actually asked for a study from the Legislative Studies Council they have, and I'll dig it up for you, but there's some good language in there about, because they surveyed and they found that essentially, I don't know, 98% of the people on these committees were from, Silver Spring, Bethesda, 3 or 4 places, that's it. So that could, I think, maybe get people's antennas up a little bit if they knew that's what's happening.
So to me, there's 2 parts of the language. So I don't know how you guys want to do it, but one is having a general sense of, hey, representation matters, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
The other part is, here's the committees that we have highlighted that are important to the Poolesville area or Western Montgomery for X reason.
Right.
Right. So that they know it's not just, anything necessarily. Although you guys might want people on anything, but just so that it's focused, so that people can clue in, if that makes sense.
No, it does, especially since a lot of these, for example, yesterday I got a note that, because I get a note all the time about these committees, one is for a Bethesda Urban Renewal Program. Well, obviously, we wouldn't want to have somebody on that. They would waste their time and they'd be bored, so it wouldn't be a good fit, and they'd never get nominated. So, yeah, it has to be ones that have an interest in our area.
But you guys have already identified those.
Yes, we have. Nancy did a good job of that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't, Nancy, if you wouldn't mind working with Niles on that piece, that would be great.
Sure.
And I will reach out to Melissa Wiedenhofer about the health committee.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
so,
great.
So I'm going to send Niles the list probably tomorrow morning.
That's it.
And and then I'm going to start tracking weekly. And so the what I'm sending to Niles is about the current and the anticipated vacancies.
Right.
I'll start checking weekly, and then I'll get in touch with the people who are already on the committees and let them know what we're thinking about and ask them to help us keep an eye out as their committees turn over.
All right, that's really great. Good work on that too, Nancy. I really appreciate the effort. A lot of good research there. Okay, on the budget process, this is really obviously critical time coming up for us, and I think you all know the basic parameters, but January 15th is when the county executive issues his capital spending plan, and then on March 15th is when he introduces his operating budget. In the capital spending plan, obviously, we've got a couple of initiatives. One is the pool bubble. Part of that is operating, and part of that is capital, and I think you saw, but in our letter, we actually broke it down because we've done a pretty good job working with the Parks and Recreation folks, getting up some good figures on what the cost would be. So we can actually do, I think, good testimony on that when the time comes. And the second piece, obviously, is moving up the community center, if we can, to the next fiscal year, the coming fiscal year. Right now, it's scheduled to start design in 2029 and then construction in 2030. And obviously, we'd like to move that up. I think we got a good rationale for that because when the council adopted the community center proposal, at the time, the POR was not done, and so they were a little confused about exactly what they were looking at. So they said, we'll just put a place marker here. They also didn't have budget money that was available at that time, so they just said, we'll put it in the out years, which they often do if they don't have money. But now we have a good idea what it looks like, what it could look like, what it would include, and we also have a figure that they've included in the budget. So I think we can actually try to push hard to get it done this year. But that would be in the January 15th, and the testimony normally for that is in February. And last time we talked, Ed, I don't think you were on the last, yeah, I guess you were at the last meeting. We talked a little bit about trying to get some student witnesses too, if we could, obviously to support the community center in particular. And I reached out to Mark, and he thought it would, the Student Government Association would be interested in, learning more about it. So I don't know if you wanted to follow up on that or not, but I think getting student testimony last year was really good, and it really helped a lot.
Do we want to get new students from what we had last time, or do we want to get some of the other ones who, like Jacob, he was the one who went with us when we went over to talk to Mark.
Right.
And then he also presented. He was one of that group of kids who's still at Poolesville who presented.
Right.
And so I'm sure we could either, I could probably task him with seeing, maybe trying to get another kid, because he's also in SGA. I believe he's the treasurer for the SGA.
Okay.
But I also think it's important to get some kids who might not be in SGA so you can have a mix of voices that are heard.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you got any ideas on that, that would be great. It would certainly be nice to have more than just one student, too. If several wanted to go down and be there that day, they don't have to testify. They can actually sit there and have signs or something. That's always good, too.
And that's on the 15th, right?
Well, it wouldn't be, we don't know yet. January 15th is when the budget comes out. The testimony is sometime in February. It's normally like the second week or something around
Okay.
that time frame. So we got some time.
Sure.
We got time.
All right, so I'll start talking, and I'll talk to my kids. And Sarah, you can probably talk to your kids. That's what we call real grassroots.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's how I always find whoever I need to find in the high school. You just start
Yeah.
asking the kids, and they spread it out into their
And you
little
start-
social
yeah.
network chains.
Yep. All right.
I think I have like 4 of them in my basement right now. I'll just go ask them
Yeah.
after the meeting.
Yep.
The other thing I thought we'd do, and I sent you guys a draft of this before, but I'll resend it, but I do think a muster email right after the budget comes out is always a good thing to reinforce for the county executive, that we saw your budget, and if it's in there, good. If it's not, then we can reinforce that too. But I've got a draft for you. I'll send it out again. But sometime after his budget comes out, we need to, I think, have a muster campaign to, reinforce that the citizens out here care about this capital spending, and especially those 2 projects.
Link, are you open to suggested edits to that?
Sure, I haven't.
I don't know how that
Yeah,
works.
absolutely. I just sent out a draft, so it's absolutely, that's why I sent it to the committee. So yeah, if you guys got ideas, that's great. And then March 15th is the operating budget. On that, it's mostly going to be the WUMCO funding, which we want to make sure is in there again and also becomes essentially a permanent line item. And then also the funding for operating budget, funding for the pool bubble. Because right now, it looks like the schedule that we've been talking to the Parks and Recreation folks about, if it comes to fruition, would be that it would, over the next 18 months, we'd get the bubble. And so you'd start actually having it available in next winter, essentially. So the operating budget would need to start getting approved now so we can get, obviously get people to staff it. Because right now, they only staff it 3 months of the year. So anyway, that's kind of a quick snapshot on what's going on with the budget. Kate Stewart is a new president of the council. I talked to her when she got approved, and Jim and I were there when she was voted in as the president. Talked to her about coming out. She was very enthusiastic. We originally had the 24th of January, but she has some other major issue that she has to deal with as the president of the council now, so she can't do it then. She now is talking about maybe January 31st. I wanted to make sure you guys, I'll float that now. And she also has another date she just sent me this morning. So I'll send those 2 dates to you and see what you think. I'd like to get her out here for a couple of hours. On the 24th, she was available for 2 hours. On the 31st, she's only available for an hour, and that's not really enough. I'd like to have her. Honestly, if you could, I'd like her to take a little tour too. So, WUMCO, and that we had Will out here at that one time. That was a great tour. We took him out to see what it looks like out there, and also we did a little street tour and went to the Sweet Lemon and places like that. So, anyway. More to come on that, but it's a great opportunity. We really need to get her on board and understand something better than she does. And she's very smart. She knows a lot about what's going on out here, but I'd like to have her see it up close and personal. So,
And maybe when the weather isn't quite so bitter cold.
well, right now, the problem is the budget starts kicking in, and she's going to be pretty much from February on really pretty busy. So if we can get her, anytime we can get her, we're just going to have to take it. So,
We're just going to wrap ourselves in scarves.
we've got to.
Yeah.
All right. White's Ferry update. You've seen a lot of the interviews and things that were done. I think we got a heck of a lot of press on the fourth anniversary. I had a conversation with the D15 delegation after I testified. They asked me to stay on, and we talked a little bit about White's Ferry. And one of the ideas that I pushed with them, and actually Linda Foley is looking into this now, is that in my last part of my career, I worked in Verizon, and I spent a lot of time with regulatory commissions. Telephone service is regulated as a common carrier service, meaning basically we are regulated because we're a semi or a monopoly. And we cannot refuse to offer service, and they usually regulate the price of the service and that kind of thing. When I looked at the charter that was granted to the ferry back in 1786, it very much reads like a public service commission type of service. It does say private parties can operate it, but it also says it's supposed to be operated in the public interest. And it talks about if the ferry operator cannot operate it for any reason, the county can take it over. Montgomery County can take it over and operate it and build its own buildings if it wants to. Basically, it is a common carrier service the way it was chartered. That's not how they're treating it. And I don't want to push that as a notion just because I want to take it over. It's a leverage. It's leverage, I think, to try to get the parties to be more reasonable. So we'll see if it goes anywhere, but I'm just frustrated at this point because other than Department of Transportation for Montgomery County negotiating, nothing else is going on. And I think our op-ed captured it beautifully. I mean, they treated it as a private dispute, and they really haven't wanted to go in and say, look, we've got an interest in getting this going. Here's what we're going to do to make it happen. We're going to put pressure on you guys, and here's how we're going to do it. So more to come on that, but other than the editorials, which I thought we did a great job of getting a lot of press on and a lot of attention, I didn't see any other activity from that happened, so nothing new to report, in other words. Finally, on the fair access budget, I sent you guys a draft of it. I'm putting together the numbers now. The only thing I didn't put in that proposal was accounting for the muster campaigns we had because I didn't have all the information. I've got that together now, so I'll put that in there as well. So what I've got really that I sent you was the budget proposal and an annual report. They're both part of what I usually submit. And I also circulated today, I always ask Laura and her team to put together an annual report on what they did on the media side, helped us get, what kind of media they got, what kind of social media. I sent it around earlier. If you guys have a chance to look at it, I think you'll see it's very impressive what we did. I mean, for a town our size to get that much attention is pretty amazing. It doesn't always change things like in White's Ferry's case, but and a lot of times it has helped. It certainly did help on the school when we first started getting press on that. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight that. If you have any thoughts about the budget proposal or anything that I included in there, certainly I'm open to taking suggestions. We're not increasing the amount we've asked for 3 years in a row. We've asked for the same amount. This year we might have to, it depends on what happens, but last year we had a surprise because we had to spend more money on White's Ferry than we thought. And the year before that, we did the economic forum that cost us some money. So, we have some wiggle room in there in case we need to do something that we're not expecting. So, you guys have, Laura, did you have any on the media side that you wanted to mention besides what we've already talked about?
Just sadly, we could not get attention from the national media. So unfortunately, that did not bear fruit. No, I mean, just glad that the local media continue to find interest. And the big highlight last year or 24 really was when Chuck Kuhn said that he'd be willing to donate it to Montgomery County to get this thing done. And so that really garnered a ton of media attention that he was willing to do that, but here we are with no movement. We're just here to continue to gain attention, but it's 4 years and what's the news, right? I think your piece on the charter, we could explore promoting that. I mean, but at some point, I think it becomes a legal issue to really get the media attention unless something else radical happens.
It was interesting that Adam I don't think he was expecting this at all, but when he published the editorial, he didn't expect it to be the number one read piece in December, but it was the number one read. 57,000 people at least clicked on that. Now, did they read it? I don't know, but they clicked on it. That's amazing. It's a lot of people. The nice thing about it, too, is that Adam is respected by council leaders, and he sent me a note afterwards saying, I'm really interested in doing my own assessment, my own piece on this, so he's going to post something himself, which would be great.
Link, I would share, if that 57,000 number is really high, should share that with a link to the article to at least some of the people who've been working on it, because at the D15 town hall, David Fraser Hidalgo gave a big speech because there were so many questions still about that, basically saying just, I don't want to say just give up, but it's going nowhere until the private dispute is done.
Yeah.
So I think with that number, it's worth repressing even to someone like that who's done a lot of work. But
I would love to see if Adam has any contacts on the Virginia side, because wouldn't it be great if, I think the 57,000 leadership is not surprising to me, because I think in Maryland, it's a big deal. I think it would be very interesting if he could talk to some people in Leesburg. Do they care? Because nobody's trying to raise it as an issue over there, but maybe there are a lot of private residents who also, it matters to them.
Yeah, we had a Canal Towns meeting the other day, and they asked us to give an overview.
Yeah, Adam is based, it's Montgomery perspective, but we certainly can reach out to Leesburg today and see if they'd be interested in doing an update story. Yeah, we hear you, like residents care more, I think, than certainly national media. I think media are interested. It's just they need to see something new together.
It's like the same story. They can't just keep doing the same story.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So I don't know, Link, if there's anything with the council, the county council, weren't they looking into some legal movement?
No, and there's nothing with DOT that I reached out to Chris Conklin, and normally he gets right back to us, and he hasn't this time, which means to me that probably there's nothing he wants to report, so. The Canal Towns group that Pools was a member of actually met here by Zoom. They didn't meet here, but they met by Zoom a couple days ago, and they asked me to give an overview of what's going on with White's Ferry, and the interest, of course, among all the Canal Towns members is very high, too. But two guys on there were with the bikers associations, and bikers were huge users of the ferry at one time. In fact, they used to have a shuttle that came from Leesburg to the ferry. They would go across and they go camping, and they come back, and the shuttle would meet them, and they go back to Leesburg to stay overnight. So I got two guys, their names. I'm going to reach out to them and see if maybe there's a bikers association in Virginia that we tried to reach one before, and we never got any press on it, but so we'll see.
Yeah, there's WABA, the Washington Area Bikers Association. I think that's for the entire region. And they may have come to the rally.
They did.
Years ago, yeah. So,
in fact, Reed Detchen, who was in Verizon with me, was the president of it at the time. And I hadn't seen him for 20 years, and he's at the rally. So I talked to him afterwards, and he said, yeah, we'll do something. And I've reached out to him since then. They really haven't done anything, so.
But yeah, maybe the Leesburg people would be better, just a straight up Leesburg group instead of a broad Washington one.
Yeah, we did have the Chamber of Commerce at Loudoun County. We actually presented to them back in 2021, and Tom Kettler, as the president here, our chamber reached out to them, and the reaction he got was, it's number 13 on our list of issues. And look, the reason is, if you look at and I just went back and looked at the 2021 study again. The amount of traffic that they can identify from Loudoun County to Virginia, to Montgomery County and back, in terms of commuting, shopping, is 11,000. That sounds like a lot, but if you go on Route 15 on a daily basis, there's more than 50,000 cars that go on there on a daily basis. So to them, especially Costco and Target, I'm guaranteeing you, they don't notice much that White's Ferry is closed.
Right.
That's the hurdle we face, is that it is big in many ways for a lot of these, especially for a lot of these citizens who can't get where they wanted to go. But for the broader DMV, it's a small drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
So, but that's why, to your point, Sarah, I think getting a group like the bikers who have a particular interest and they're pretty visible, if they got interested, it might make a difference. I don't know.
Well, I know a guy over there. He's got some property over there, and I've been talking to him. I can reach out to him.
Okay.
He's right across from the ferry for the most part, so he knows a lot of people over there. He's got about a 400-acre farm. He's well in the community. I'll reach out to him. Talk to him.
Okay, that'd be great. Any other ideas you have, that's great, because we've done this for 4 years and it hasn't worked, so anything else you can do would be great.
That coon actually tried to buy his property. It's a historic farm, so.
All right, well, thank you. Is there anything else that anybody has for the good of the order? No?
Just one thing. What I was going to do is, I'm sorry I wasn't able to jump in and participate at the beginning. But if you guys already talked about the field for the high school?
I just mentioned that you and Alan were going to work on setting up a meeting.
So Alan and I have been doing that and having some discussion. So what I'd like to do is, if we could find time on the next agenda, is have Alan wearing his booster hat.
Okay.
He'll come and present to us as a fair access committee.
Oh, good.
Sharing, just an overview of what's happening, so we all would know. And then look at, and then what I asked him is, let's look at what are those top 3 things that the boosters are working on with the school system, where they would need support in terms of advocacy. So he'll come to our next meeting, and you and I get together and look at carving out some time for him to talk.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Good. All right. Niles, did you have something
I did have something.
Okay.
I apologize for the interruption. So the Planning Commission at the last meeting discussed changes to the parking regulations in what we're calling the Cultural Arts District, and around commercial parking requirements. So the basic plan, potentially, they haven't worked out all the details. In fact, I'm working on a report about these different ideas around parking, would be to essentially get rid of parking minimums so that commercial owners, or making them much, much less. So for example, in Cambridge, Maryland, their basic parking maximum is 1 spot. Like, each place gets 1 spot. But outside of that, unless you need more, that's up to the property owner. It's not up to the town necessarily. So one of the things that came up with that is, then what do we do about parking questions? And one was looking at our own lots. So the lot at Town Hall, lot that's going to be next door, as part of the Willard property. And also the idea of utilizing the new parking that will be at the community center, and potentially reaching out to the schools about high school parking, about using it after hours. And I know that that's been an issue in the past, but the discussion that came up during the Planning Commission meeting was potentially having this be something that the Fair Access look into. Not saying that you guys have to or create more work, but that was one of the discussion that came from that. So I was tasked, Wade and I talked about this on Wednesday, of just sort of throwing it out there and seeing what you guys think about it and how to proceed potentially. There's other things we could look at. I know there's the Office of Community Use for the facilities, and sometimes for special events and things like that. School parking can be used. Usually that's stuff on property, but there might be ways of facilitating that for like overflow parking or something like that. So that was something that was brought up, so I wanted to bring it up to you guys and get your sort of feedback.
Niles, is the idea behind removing the minimums because of the historic sites, the historic part of town is more compressed and it's harder to find parking space? Is that what it is? To make it easier for businesses to grow there and to want to come and locate?
Exactly. And to encourage a walkable area, so that the idea would be, like, for example, that you could park at Town Hall there and walk down to locals, and especially once the development goes in, because one of the things that'll happen next door is that there will be a sidewalk on this side of the street now.
Right.
And we'll go back and we'll go right and connect right with where the John Poole House is, where Locals is, all of that stuff. And there'd be a parking lot, sort of overflow parking lot in that area as well. So there'd be more parking there. So to utilize things like that to kind of encourage people to go and shop and walk around and things like that, and to encourage future development in that same notion. So using sort of, locals and Caleva and all these different kind of places that are already there as models, Riverworks, to sort of expand that idea, hence the idea of it being a cultural arts district. So that's sort of the overall framework, and then trying to utilize other facilities to kind of augment that. So the primary idea is to be walkable, but if people need to drive, which is more of an issue here with the lack of public transportation that we talked about earlier, utilizing it in that way. So that was sort of the discussion that was had.
Are they, when they mentioned fair access, were they thinking it because we have connections with a lot of the different places, like the schools, and like we could talk to them about whether they would be willing to consider
Correct.
these ideas? Is that why? Okay.
Exactly. That was particularly the schools was the angle that they were thinking about, because like with the community center, obviously we will still own the property. So what we can do with that parking can be written into an MOU with the county when we get to that point.
Right.
And say, during, particularly after hours, like an example of something like that is in Fairfax. They allow certain parking, which is normally private parking during the day, to be public parking after hours. So
Right.
things like that, trying to find ways of encouraging, office parking to be something else, or in this case, school parking to be something else in the evenings, or specifically, on weekends or things like that. Trying to find some accommodation to add a little bit of space, a few spaces to augment what we're trying to do.
Are they also considering some of the private institutions like the Episcopal Church and the Baptist Church as part of that?
So that's something that we can look at. I mean, that's something that came up with Riverworks itself. So when
Yeah.
Riverworks got its site plan approved, it had to get parking agreements with the various churches
Right.
for their events. So that avenue sort of already exists,
All right.
but it's something that was specific to that site, but might be something to look at as we're going forward.
Yeah. And I assume that kind of agreement was basically not on a Sunday and that kind of thing is what they talked
Correct.
about? Okay.
Exactly. So it's written out exactly how it would work.
Yeah.
So when they have events, they have to give notice. They have to, signage actually was one of the things that was agreed to, both in the agreements and in the site plan approval and the variance that was approved, because they also had to get a variance for their parking.
Right.
So that all of that type of language was put into the various agreements that were done and the approvals that were done.
Yeah.
So that's a model sort of, again, of looking at these ideas.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what the Planning Commission is considering. Is obviously something that isn't ready yet to be enacted. It's not something that is at the commissioners yet or anything like that, but is sort of being mulled over, and wanted to get your input on it as well as sort of this is how we're looking at trying to facilitate and potentially grow that area of town through this sort of rezoning process, for lack of a better term.
Well, the whole initiative is one that's very much in line with our overall focus so much on trying to get more economic activity out here. So I think it's a good fit. In terms of contacts, though, clearly with, with Mark and we know the assistant principal well and the business manager well. Those are the kind of people you'd have to talk to. But you may also at some point have to draw in Marilyn Balcom or people like that as well. So, yeah, we could certainly do that if it really depends more on what the plan starts getting more solid and we get a sense of what they're looking at, then, I think at least my view would be, we'd be interested in being helpful. Anybody else have a view, or?
That's why we went.
Yeah. No, that's good advice, and I'm really pleased with what they're doing in this. It's a very important part of helping the town become more vital, I think, going forward. And it fits right in with what we're doing. If we had the pool bubble, when we get that done, the community center, and they all kind of help make that whole place more thriving. So it's great.
It's connections, and that's what we saw. I mean, even when we were talking about the relocation of the dog park in related to the community center, people talked about the institutions they go to in town. The pool was one of them. The dog park was another one, and things like that. So these things are connective tissue to the town as well, in these different ways.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to say then, for what I'm going to write for the planning commission is I'm just going to say that we had this discussion and that you've been informed of this path and that you think it aligns with your goals.
Yeah.
And that is something to pursue potentially directly with the high school or with the county council level to sort of facilitate this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that sound good?
Yeah,
Okay.
very good.
All right. Perfect. Excellent.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing it up. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? If not, I want to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Anybody?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Hi.
Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the offer to snowblow. Yeah.